with that?
Yeah, I'll get it started. So this has been a real fascinating endeavor for me to kind of follow along. It's been really interesting. You know, for me, solar's kind of been a bit of a black hole for me. I mean, I understand what solar is and how it works and how it benefits the masses, but for TUD with TPPA, I've always had a misunderstanding of really how this could benefit the district. And so Elizabeth and Eric Johnson have endeavored to put quite a bit of time into really fully trying to help us understand how we can benefit from the use of solar. And so they've done a really good job of putting this memo together, and I'm really happy and like the information here. So I'll have them go through parts of this memo and this proposal from SiteLogic. But in the end, what I hope to accomplish here today is one, hopefully provide you with all of the information you might need to make some sort of a recommendation, or two, if out of this meeting we have a few more questions to do some research, and we'll go back to the table and do some research. But ultimately, at some point, you know, I'd like to have some direction to take this to the full board at some point. Not in a huge hurry here, but take it to the full board for full discussion. So that's kind of my intro. So.
Okay, well, very good. Yeah, I'll echo what Don said. Solar isn't something I knew a lot about. I have it on my own home, put it on my own home, but like a lot of the challenges here are more related to the financial side and the contractual side and all the various plethora of programs out there, and you know, how would you fund it, finance it, and so we quickly, Elizabeth, I should say, quickly dove into that aspect, and this memo is still kind of a work in progress, but we don't need to go into great detail unless the committee wishes to, but we'll just kind of touch on the high points and then hopefully stimulate some conversations, some questions. Painting the landscape, right? The big picture, the scope and scale of the district's energy use. We spend about, and Steve's here now, about $500,000-$600,000 a year annually in electricity. Those costs are going up as PG&E rates, you know, perpetually seem to rise, and also TPPA rates are going up. And when we bring our regional wastewater treatment plant online, that will impose new electricity costs that we previously hadn't had. So we see that those costs are going to rise. They represent about 2.5% of our operating budget, but they're the second largest. If you recall, Steve will do his top 10 operating expenses. Electricity is right up there near the top. So it is a big expense for the district. We have two flavors of, and I'm telling you guys things you already know, but I think it's important to just kind of rehash this. We have two flavors of electric accounts. One, PG&E, the other TPPA, Tuolumne Public Power Authority. So that TPPA probably accounts for, and Elizabeth and I meant to go look back, I think the memo needs to be updated. It's probably more on the neighborhood of 70% of our electricity costs. So I'm seeing Steve nod. I think our memo was a little off on that. But so the vast majority of our electricity use is covered under TPPA, which is at a 15.35 cents per kilowatt hour cost, which is really a lot better than the PG&E cost.
Can you say that one more time? That was 15.5?
15.35 cents per kilowatt hour.
Is that
the new TPPA rate? It jumped pretty substantially. And then, so the other remaining 30%, let's say, is covered under PG&E. If we had our druthers, everything would be under TPPA. Unfortunately, they have a criteria for you to be receiving power from them, and that is that each account must have an average, it's like a 3-month average use, reflecting an annual 20,000 kilowatt per hour average. Which if you talk with Travis in accounting, I think he says, oh, if our PG&E average monthly bill is $500 a month or greater for 3 consecutive months, he's gonna apply to Tuolumne County, they're the administrator of the TPPA, and request that that account be converted over so that we can now receive the 15.35 cents per kilowatt hour. Well, we still have, I don't know how many.
What's the current PG&E rate? Did you already say that?
I didn't, yeah, I mean, I think it's
hard.
yeah, it's a little difficult. I think it's somewhere in the 25 cents a kilowatt hour range, 25 cents a kilowatt hour range. It's fairly cryptic, but it's significantly more than TPPA.
It can go as high as 42, I know that.
Yeah, exactly. And there's all sorts of things with time of use metering and those things that come into PG&E. PG&E rates have been rising much quicker too than TPPA. But so we're at a situation where the majority of our big accounts, all of our big accounts are TPPA. And then all these small little sites where we may have monitoring equipment, SCADA equipment, all we may be operating is a float or a pulsar head or a mag meter, partial flume, that kind of thing that will transmit an alarm back to our office. Those things are going to be on PG&E. There are some of our pump stations that are on PG&E too, because they just don't qualify at the 20,000 kilowatt hours per annual average. That's kind of, I don't know, Elizabeth, if you have something to add there.
I think you pretty much covered it.
Okay, so we did a real high level triple bottom line. I use that term loosely. I know that there are specific ways to do triple bottom line, but we wanted to acknowledge that there's much more than just the financial aspects in making a decision on it if we want to proceed with solar. And those involve social and environmental benefits. Certainly socially, you can read through the memo and we can come up with many more, but to have a solar on our building or to have it a ground mount system where it's easily visible and people are able to kind of see that there's a message being sent by the district that it values green energy, that it's an early applier and relatively early applier of some of these technologies, that we want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. All of those things have value that I'm not sure how we quantify, but they're there. Environmentally, solar, even with the life cycle cost of the fabrication of the solar panels and all of the activities associated with building them, there's still a net environmental benefit, especially when you consider that I think Elizabeth worked out there was about 125,000 pounds of CO2 or carbon that were released, we feel, from our PG&E account energy use. So what PG&E uses to generate that power, our use would account for about that 125,000 pounds of carbon. So there's certainly benefits there. On the economic side is where we spent most of our time just because it is kind of complicated. I could share screen here and maybe give us a little more context here. So first off, you're not really going to find that unless we get a sizable grant, you're not going to find solar to be economically feasible to offset the power at a TPPA account. And these are our top 10 energy users. They're all TPPA accounts. However, if you were to convert one or more of those to a PG&E account and then take advantage of a program called the RESBCT, sounds like the song, you can aggregate. The program is a PG&E program that allows public agencies to aggregate their sites and their meters into one location for large scale generation and then credit the energy produced. Let's say this site could be credited to all of the other PG&E services we have, which I don't know how many we have, Steve. I think
A bunch.
Dozens,
like
dozens.
Yeah, like 70 or something.
like seven, yeah, we have like seven, so.
I know it's a bunch.
So a bunch, and we're not sure if the program limits you to 50 that you can aggregate, but we spoke with Site Log IQ, which Elizabeth had quite a few interactions with them, and then I know Director Kearns and Director Balin, we had a meeting with Site Log IQ here and with TPPA, and we just discussed this program and how it really is probably best suited for our district because of all of these really small PG&E accounts. It doesn't seem feasible for a number of reasons to install solar at all these individual sites. The reasons are, one, first, the capital cost versus their consumption. Their consumption is so small. Two, that space-wise on some of these sites, pretty small. We took a look at our Damon Road sewer lift station. We thought that was a pretty good example of a typical sewer lift station. And the roof area and the real estate that we had, ground mount wasn't feasible. Putting it on the roof, we just couldn't generate the kind of power we need. So in a solar system, you have to oversize it because it's only generating power for during the daylight hours, which may be, depending on the season, you know, it may be 7 to 12 hours, 8 to 12 hours. So somewhere in between 30 to 50% of the time, it's actually generating. And at night, especially at a lot of these facilities, they're still powerless. So we need to oversize it so that the value of the power that we sell back into or credit back into the grid would offset our use when it's not sunny outside. So those became challenges for us. And then Site Log IQ really focused in on a couple sites, our office and the Quartz Reservoir site, which we can share a little bit more about those. Elizabeth, please interrupt me.
One thing I think is worth mentioning is that Damon Road lift station is a TPPA site, and generally our sewer lift stations are TPPA sites, so that's another
Okay,
reason.
thank you. Know that. Let's see here. I'd like to get down to.
So Eric, what you said there is that we could put basically a solar farm in, so convert to PG, go to that program and basically put in a solar farm, and then that would help offset all of our accounts, correct?
That's correct. Yep, that's the concept. And you know, we do have some sites that have enough real estate. This location, Quartz, we didn't look at our regional wastewater treatment plant, which I think we would want to if we really want to dive in more, because my suspicion is after our new plant's online, it will take the #1 spot for energy use. It will possibly pass up our central office. And once we demo some of the older facilities at that site, there would be a great location for solar. Great exposure, fairly flat, right alongside the highway, which has its own benefits as far as, you know, letting people know that we're adopting solar. So I'd like to kind of highlight on a few things here. This is a summary, and Elizabeth, I don't know if you want to kind of explain what this table means.
Yeah, so SiteLog IQ did a very preliminary cost analysis on a few different alternatives, 2 of them being at the TUD office, the other one being at Quartz, and those are included in Appendix B. So these numbers come from those appendices, and they are the sizes, costs associated with each of those. These aren't accurate cost estimates because this is very preliminary and we didn't have too much discussion before they designed these on where the solar panels would be and things like that. So this is more just for information to kind of make a decision on if this is something we want to pursue. The payback period column on the right, you can see is very high. This is if we were to finance a solar installation with the TEML loan. The payback period in the column onto the left there is probably a bit confusing. That is if we were to pay entirely upfront, how many years it would take for the energy savings to pay back the capital cost of the installation and in addition to the operational cost.
Yeah, and to clarify that, it says grant in parentheses. If we were to get a grant that was gonna pay for the whole cost, we would do it in a heartbeat. But another way of saying the payback is the break-even point. So the duration in which the savings equaled the cost. And so those are two options. And the TEML, we think is at a 3.5 to 3.75% interest rate. This came from SiteLog IQ. And those assume complete 100% financing, so no district upfront cost. Yeah, they range, from 485 kilowatts down to a smaller system, and we can show you kind of what those look like.
Before you leave, I think I have some questions.
Sure.
One is, you just said grant, if it were grant fund, we just do it automatically, because then this payback is instantaneously, right? Right.
We're saving money on year one.
Year one, okay, great. And then two, maybe there's another question in there coming up, but what's the life cycle of a solar system? 25 years?
About 25 years.
25 years, okay, so uptime, all right. Okay, I think that's it for now.
Yeah, and I think there was some of the funding programs that were like subsidized at lower interest rates required you to have like required the system to pay for itself within 17 years or less, otherwise you weren't eligible. They didn't want to subsidize systems that were, not that economically feasible.
Thanks for saying that. Now I have another question. So I know you said these cost estimates aren't accurate. They're not down to the penny, I get it. But in the respect program, you probably didn't account for all 70 PG&E meters.
So that is a good question. And I don't know some of the finer details on how they did those costs. They said that it was calculated. So the alternative, the first row there and the last row at Quartz, they said that was calculated to offset all PG&E meters.
Okay.
However, they're very aware of the RES-BCT program constraints. So I'm not sure. I think it's also worth mentioning that those smaller PG&E accounts use about 15 kilowatt hours over a whole month. So I don't know if they would change these numbers, but that is a good question. I'm not sure if they offsetted 50 of the PG&E meters or all of them.
But those 70 meters too, the dollar value of what
Yeah,
we're paying
that's what I thought,
is very small compared to the total.
Yeah, I was just gonna tell the whole group, many of our facilities are standby well systems or tank sites that we barely pay the base rate. I mean, we may only pay the base rate. So
And then
does the base rate get covered? Or just the consumption?
No.
Great question. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
You're
there
stuck
are
with that.
programs where it does. I think they're phasing out, but no.
I'm glad you went down that question because we didn't include that in the memo and I was like, oh, that's a good question. We spend about $80,000 a year on our PG&E accounts. And what percentage of that is base, I don't know. But a lot of it is because some of those accounts just basically pay the base charge, hardly any consumption. And we will ask SiteLog IQ that question because if we can only get credit for energy produced here towards the consumption at those sites, and it does not credit us for the base charge then. They've presumably, SiteLog IQ have done that math. We just don't know.
For David and Jeff's benefit, I believe you and or Travis provided SiteLogic IQ, all of our information, our TPPA and PG information, right? So they have it. So they ran the analysis knowing full well what we have. Okay.
David has his hand up and then Jeff.
And I could stop sharing if you guys want to see. I'll stop
No.
sharing right now.
I
I'll
know
let
what
you
you're
folks
talking
back.
I remember, right?
David?
So, question on the screen you had up, Eric,
Of course.
are those numbers all proportional across, no matter what the, say like you increase the size of the system, the other numbers would follow by the same multiplier?
No, it wouldn't be proportional. It gets kind of complicated depending on installation costs and if it's ground mount, roof mount. There are options to do carport, so it depends. Some of these alternatives you can see in Appendix B were sized based off of space available. And so those costs would not go up proportionally.
Okay, because I was thinking like Quartz Reservoir, there's two sites at Quartz, one of them being a little complicated with, the division of dam safety, but the other site is near equal in size and it's far greater than 20,000 square feet.
And David, we didn't go into great detail on all the sites at Quartz. SiteLog IQ focused on this site, which is actually ironically on Jamestown Sanitary District's land, just because of its ease of installation and level, ground surface. But there are other sites, like you said.
Well, yeah, but you don't necessarily want, granted, construction gets a little bit more tedious, but you don't necessarily want flat ground for solar. I mean, you're building for a slope anyway that, is what, 13, somewhere 8 to 13% as far as slope.
Yeah, either way, I mean, you can make a ground mount system be sloped, whatever, you could set the rake at whatever you want. They just selected this site as an obvious footprint location. They could fit what they needed to, but yeah, I mean, we certainly have other lands farther down near the dam that would be suitable as well. And we just didn't quite go into that detail yet. We really wanted to just explore, does this make sense in terms of how much we could generate and the value and the break even or payback time. And so this actually site, Quartz, was the best site. According to SiteLog IQ, we want to look at our wastewater plant, but because there's already a PG&E meter down there, we have that conduit. That PG&E meter is our pathway back into the system for us to be eligible to utilize that RES DCT program. And then we would also convert we have 2 accounts there. We'd also convert the other TPPA account to PG&E, offset as much of our use there for the 40 horsepower and the 50 horsepower pumps. And then, get credits for everything else.
You've got that 150 horsepower too
That too.
runs for 6 weeks out of the year as well. Yeah, it just seems like part of the environmental side, that I've heard people starting to realize is you don't want to build solar on a flat piece of ground that has other beneficial uses. Whereas if you put, say like you go to the, west back onto Quartz property, that south facing rocky slope that has no future purpose other than potential use of water in a fashion of get rid of it. That rocky slope, you can't farm it, you can't put a building on it easily or increase. You put solar on a rooftop because it's not a pathway, it's not where you're expecting to build something more usable. So instead of using our flat ground up, which is a rarity up here, I would think we definitely want to go after the more undesirable, sites construction wise, but construction only lasts a short period of time. And, leave the other resources available for other things.
Yeah, are you referring to the Fogger field down there, not on the dam, but as you're driving down from the dam on the left-hand side that we installed 10 some odd years ago?
Yeah, well, not the official Fogger system down below that, was funded, built, that it's still in operation. I was referring to the one that's directly behind the Jamestown plant on the Quartz side. That north end of that property is all a south facing slope, but it's a rocky and it's a slope. Right there.
Yeah, is it, are you talking over? Yeah, over, sorry.
Yeah, there you go, right there. In along that, it's probably about 1,300 feet long. So, and before you get to that water, high water mark, you've got at least 125 feet of ground. So pretty sizable chunk of area.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and they actually, SiteLog IQ, they started salivating when they saw Quartz Reservoir. They were like, well, put that on there. The cost to do a floating system and a ground mount system are apparently getting closer. And we told them, hey, but that thing fluctuates by 60 feet or whatever. I don't know if we can do that, but they also were just saying that, some agencies are, and we know that, are floating them. And so that would be another option at some site potentially.
There could be a collateral benefit to floating solar, though, if you can overcome some of those hurdles, because your water quality, you're going to stop ultraviolet, you're going to stop some of your algae regrowth on top of the nutrient reduction that reservoir is going to see. You may not have any algae bloom.
Yeah, and so I guess for just showing here were the other, here was the 485 kilowatt. Again, none of these have been really ground truthed. And, we obviously, there are wetlands, I believe, in this area, no formal wetland delineation, but we believe there might be. And our crews use that area for disposing things. So it isn't necessarily the best area, but SiteLog IQ saw that and knew that was TUD's property. And so they laid out a pretty large system there. Again, in this case, it would be to offset all of our PG meters. And that's what they say, but we'll get clarification from them on that.
Now, would there be, and obviously you'd have to build it at a higher elevation, but I mean, we refer to the asphalted parking lots and stuff as a heat sink that, is just basically gathering and doing that. If you put solar on top of a parking lot, change solar radiation to electrical power, does that then change the heat coefficient that's generated back into the environment?
I'm sure it would. Yeah, I'm sure that black body radiation from the asphalt, it wouldn't be there. But we didn't do that. We didn't ask them to do that because it was more the carport option was,
Well, I think they just didn't do that at this stage. Kenny has been interested in a carport option. It is a little more expensive. I don't know by how much.
Yeah, so SiteLogic just did these 2 or 3 proposals on their own without really any consultation with us, I don't think. So yeah, I think if we want to move down this road, there's lots of other ideas that we can explore and cost out. And I also just have to add that, you know, on the CEQA analysis on a built environment is differently than on an unbuilt environment. So all those things will have to get factored in there too.
If we were to get serious about a parking lot cover solution, we might want to talk to the hospital. I know they put solar on top of their parking lot down there, right next on the lower side of the hospital there. They might have some data. I don't know if it covers the complete parking lot, but I know it covers a portion of it.
I know that parking lot, you walk under that solar field and it's a whole lot cooler than when you're walking out in the sunshine. I can tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That
Interesting, okay.
you know, I have no idea what their, you know, payback and all that is. I would say that they probably got at least 60 to 70% of the parking area there on that lower side is covered. So pretty sizable.
Yeah, and that was a hot spot in the summertime before. If you were out there, as you know, David, walking around, it made a difference.
You know that site won't work, right?
yeah, no, we know that.
Right.
But here's the thing, is the construction cost for that system isn't gonna change much if it's ground mount there or ground mount somewhere else. The carport will be more expensive, but then the values that we're discussing may offset that additional cost. They also looked at, let me scroll up, sorry, it's kind of clunky here. They also looked at a smaller system that would essentially not be for export. We would keep our TPPA account here at the district. We would not convert to PG&E, and it would offset not all, but some of our energy consumption here at this site. So this would be a solar system sized just for our office, and it would be a roof. It could be a roof mount system. You could imagine that footprint being in a carport on in the yard there, the same kind of footprint, or you know where all the drive stalls are, the parking stalls, make a row there and then a row on the north side, and you'd probably have pretty similar amount of output. 123 kilowatts is what they said there. Energy offset is only 42% under this scenario. So we would, but then it says exported to grid 32%. So I think there's something not quite right about that, because here's the thing about TPPA and Director Kearns, Director Balin, we met with TPPA and asked them, could we export? And unfortunately, their bylaws, their policies don't allow that, and it's not really under their control. It's the way in which WAPA dictates the way they do business, WAPA, Western Area Power Authority. And so they have limited discretion of changing that. We did ask them though, if they would entertain an RS-BCT equivalent type of program where we could generate and then get credits. So we aren't actually selling anything, because they don't allow member agencies to sell. That is Liz Peterson at the county, said she would look into that, and we haven't heard back. So we're moving forward under the assumption that TPPA will not allow that, but we will follow up with her.
Good. Yeah. Well, I get the three-pronged, the triple net approach. I do. I'm afraid our ratepayers are just going to want to know, what's it mean to me when I pay my water bill every month and sewer bill. And so somehow, in my opinion, we got to make the dollars and cents. They've got to make some sense. I'm not sure we're quite there yet, but what do you think, David?
It depends on where you compare it. You know, offsetting, our power consumption with, renewable resources, environmental benefit, reducing that, what sounded like nearly 75 tons of,
125,000, so yeah.
Mhm.
that, by offsetting that reduction on a, global scale, and everybody did that, there's some benefits that way as well too.
Mhm.
Benefits to our great grandchildren and, their grandchildren. And the problem I have with this right now isn't so much the concept. Really like to try and brainstorm a little bit on some of these other sections with you as far as some of the details, but that's not extremely important. But we're not a budgeted item, and this is only one proposal. So the site log IQ, they're not the only ones out there that do this. So are we protecting the ratepayers by making sure we're getting the, best company at the best price, doing the initial work for us?
Yeah. I don't know how we got in touch with them.
I talked to a number of companies. I don't have any other prices from other companies. A lot of the ones in our region are smaller and could not take on a project of this size at the time. Also, solar companies are very busy with some of the solar changes with the NEM tariff. So it was not feasible for them to take it on. Some of the larger companies were very hard to reach. So this is the only company I've gotten to this stage with.
Okay. And Elizabeth was already working with SiteLogic before I met them. I was in San Diego at a CSDA conference, and I met them incidentally down there. And so I think that's kind of how this relationship with them kind of got started. But you're right, we can shop around if that's what this group wants to do. We haven't really talked about their proposal, which we could if we wanted to. Anyway, I thought I had another thing to say, but I forgot it right now.
One of the things about Site Log IQ, and you're right, Director Bowray, we haven't talked with others, but they do seem extremely professional, and they know all the players. They seemed very informed also on the funding side. And so this proposal from them, while we may not be ready to move forward without a grant, this proposal from them, I would hope, would give us what we would need to maybe get a grant. I don't know how successful we would be in the grant world without an initial reasonable cost estimate, a reasonable plan, and a very well thought out justification for why this would be valuable for the district. And that's what I would hope we would get from SiteLogic. One of the things they do is design build. So we've been talking about this. They will help you find the funding, design the system, and build it. So they're kind of turnkey. And I think maybe that's one of the things the board would want to consider is this investment something they want to make in order for us to avail ourselves to grants, which if we were able to get a grant that would fund a sizable portion of this, the economics all change. Everything changes, and I think the decisions, I think it's easier.
What did SiteLogic say about the upcoming grant opportunities that may be coming? What did they say? I don't really recall. Do you remember?
I don't know what they said in the meeting, but mostly a lot a lot of grants are coming up with the new federal infrastructure bill. And a lot of money has been budgeted towards solar and renewable energy, things like that. There are a few grants that have existed before that infrastructure bill, and more will be rolling out.
They said something about the Inflation Reduction Act and that, I don't know the terms, but that the federal government was going to release the criteria for some new funding in, like, they thought next year, like February, March timeframe. And so they thought that at that point, there would be more money out there.
And really, how much money, out of pocket money, are we talking about for the district if we were to move forward with SiteLogic? Now, there's a couple of things about their proposal that we don't really care about. We want to negotiate, but that's being said, there's smaller things, but how much money are we really talking about out of pocket money to move forward today? Let me just finish saying, I'm assuming this is to have a shovel-ready project ready to go once this funding comes.
They had $20,000 fee in their proposal. And it was, if I recall right, I should have read it again right before, it was a bit of a non-refundable deal. So if we chose not to move forward with them, then we had to pay them the $20,000. If we moved forward with them doing design build on the project, then it was folded into the project cost. I would hope we would have, maybe not 100% shovel ready, but we would have something that would give you the rack design, the solar panel specifications, the footprint, maybe the foundation design, all of those things I would hope we would get with the 20,000 so that when we submit a grant application, it's clear that we're essentially shovel ready. There might be some other details, but they don't need to know.
Is this the one where you paid the 20 grand, but they had the right, they kept?
That was one of the issues we had with this, is that they retained ownership of their work product, and we would, if the board wanted us to move forward, I think we would ask them to relinquish that to us so that we could go shop it for grants, because I don't think we want to be married to them forever. Like, every time we want to apply for a grant, they have their fingers in the cookie jar, their hands in the cookie jar. We want to be able to go out and advocate on our own behalf. Otherwise, they're kind of advocating for themselves first and the district second, in the sense that they're doing business development, which is great. Well, we can ride that horse as long as we can ride it because they're very motivated. But at some point, we want to pay and get the work product for our own use.
So with this agreement, we wouldn't own the generated work product?
I think it's a negotiable item. Currently, the way it's written in that letter of agreement, they keep the plans and everything.
Gotcha.
So it says ownership of work products, including all performas, schedules, and scope of work, documentation provided by SiteLogic will only become the property of the client upon execution of a binding irrevocable contract. So what does that mean? What does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? I thought the way it was written, it was that we're going to move forward with the installation, but if it means executing this, then maybe we do retain. But this
Like
letter,
I said, this was there's a couple items here that we didn't really care for. We could explore and have a conversation with them, and I purposely didn't invite them here because I just want to have this open conversation with you all, so we got your questions answered and maybe generate some more questions. But if we want to move forward, Eric and I and Elizabeth will probably meet with them and discuss some components of their agreement. We're not ready to sign it as is for sure.
Okay. I got one more question. And it may have been answered before, but I just want to ask it. On the RSVCT program, I don't think we've done an analysis yet of what. Let's see, let me think about this. if we go to an RSVCT program, that means we go back to PG&E, we pay the higher rates. We install whatever system we're going to install, and then we get to get paid back for those credits, correct? For the solar we generate?
Yeah, so the site that the installation would be at would be switched to PG&E.
Correct.
And then we would have the option, depending, to either offset all of our current PG&E meters or switch our large sites to PG&E for higher rates. And yeah, the exported energy generation at that site would be given at a credit, and that credit could be used at the other sites.
Right. So I don't think we've done an analysis yet to see what that means in hard dollars at the end of the day, does it, compared to what we're paying now with TPPA?
The added cost of switching to PG&E.
Yeah, and then with the benefits of RSVCT added back in.
Yeah, so
Did I miss that?
I would like to talk to SiteLog IQ a little more on how they calculated these things, but for example, if you take the TUD headquarters ground mount system, I believe they put the entire energy cost, including what we would have to pay at the PG&E rate that is not offset, and put that into the cost and compared how much energy savings we have that way. I'm not entirely sure how they calculated that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to Dawn's comment, I think we need to check on, are we able to get credit for applied to our base charges on all of those 70 some odd PG&E accounts. So I think there is a little more sharpening the pencil there, and we'll ask, SiteLogic. Now they've been very helpful, but now they're kind of wanting to get compensated for some of their time. So I think we can go back to the well a couple more times with them, and then they're going to say, well, really would like to get into an agreement with you. So we'll flesh these details out. If the committee wants us to go to the board, we'll be prepared for that conversation.
David, got your hand up? You're muted.
You're unmuted, David.
I was thinking too that, when you switch back to PG&E, if we're not going to be able to be compensated for our base rates, your instantaneous demand, your high amperage draw is part of what, PG&E calculates or uses as a multiplier in your base rate. Was my understanding for the way large industrial users such as a regional plant and Quartz Reservoir calculated. That
Interesting.
Yeah, and Elizabeth gave SiteLog IQ, SiteLogic, I'm not sure, our demand profile, like literally like every so many minutes, the energy use. And so the demand profile at our facility here at the office is like all the use is almost during the day. So that's great. That's when we're producing energy. Contrast that with the regional plant, where you're going to have these big blowers running constantly all the time. It's going to be a pretty flat demand profile. So there's going to be a lot of use at night when we wouldn't be able to necessarily. Now, the PG&E rate may be less then, but we won't certainly be able to generate solar at the same time to feed that demand. So yeah, there's a SiteLog IQ really they have a computer program they use that does this whole sizing and calculation for us.
Yeah, I was speaking mainly to the base rate, the way PG&E comes up with that.
Yeah, we're assuming SiteLogic, when they're calculating these paybacks, they have to be doing this. Because we know right now, PG&E is almost twice as expensive as TPPA, even with the higher TPPA rates. So for them to be providing this proposal, and I think really what we're looking at today is whether we can go forward with this proposal from them and take it to the full board. But, you know, the payback period's dependent upon that. And you're right, the base rates are built into that. And they're gonna be that way, and it's gonna affect the payback period. It's just a matter of how much energy can be generated and how does that get credited back. So those are the, you know, the devil's in the details long term. What I'm seeing right now is whether, you know, we proceed and take this to the full board for discussion and talking about $20,000 contract with them and then go forward from there.
Yeah. Well, I'm fine with sending the full board. How about you, David?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have some of the same debate that we're having right now. So certainly having the question for the base rate answered, you know, and, you know, potentially are there other companies out there that, you know, could be looked at? Would be something to, you know, make sure we have, you know, some sort of response for.
It may be that we have to spend that 20 grand to get these questions answered.
And, you know, at 20 grand to me, if you're in ownership of, you know, the potential material to go after grant funding to do these projects, that doesn't sound like very much money for, you know, something with the potential for benefit. So,
Yeah, I agree.
You know, I'm so ignorant when it comes to these potential grants, or I should say ignorant, but the faith, do I have a wholehearted faith that these grants are truly gonna materialize for us? I just don't know. It sure sounds like it is, but I just don't know. But you're right, David, you know, $20,000 isn't an awful lot of money compared to the millions of dollars we could be saving, you know, short term and long term, so. But we've got some questions for SiteLogic. We certainly won't sign this contract until we do have this discussion with the full board and we have some more questions. So potentially we'll have an internal meeting with SiteLogic, ask a few more questions, get some more certainty from them. And then again, maybe invite them to the board meeting itself so that they can answer questions on the spot.
Sounds good.
Maybe they'll write a grant for us.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be fun.
hey, you know, if we're using them as a, you know, what is it, design build? I'm kind of thinking they might.
Yeah.
Well, that's how they get paid, is through these grants. So that's how they make their money.
All right. You guys need anything else from us?
Nope.
Okay, so then it's agreed. We'll go ahead and send it to the full board then.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Okay.